Chapter 410. Listening to Yang Kai's request, Yang Zhen couldn't help looking at him in surprise, not having expected his requirements to be so high. Nodding, he said, "I'll help you prepare them, I'll have them delivered to your house." "Many thanks, Elder, I'll take my leave." Yang Kai nodded. Turning around, he walked out. "Little brat, don't be defeated too early in the inheritance war, otherwise this old master will be disappointed." Yang Zhen's voice called out from behind. "Elders, please wait and see." By the time these words came out, Yang Kai had already disappeared. "Arrogant." Yang Zhen snorted. The sixth elder, who had just gone to invite Cheng Bai Lian, frowned for a moment before saying, "Yang Zhen, this little brat is gambling. If he doesn't do well, he'll be doomed. The inheritance war has always been a gamble. How could those young brats not see the opportunity in it?" But none of them dared to make such a decision, only he dared. Yang Zhen's eyes flashed as he nodded lightly. "Although I can't see any results in the short term, at least he has taken the initiative in the Blood Warrior Hall. This little brat from Fourth Brother's house is very courageous, very much like the Yang family." If Yang Kai were to choose these two blood servants, how could these elders, with their shrewdness and eyesight, not understand the gains and losses? With such a choice, in the inheritance war, as long as they were able to stabilize their footing in the early stages and not be defeated quickly, the benefits they could receive in the future would be greater and greater. The only thing they needed to worry about was that in the early stages, the two blood warriors would be killed before their injuries were healed. Blood Warrior Hall. There was a very special place in the Yang family, the place where the blood warriors usually lived. Even from more than a dozen kilometers away, one could clearly feel the endless fighting intent emanating from the Blood Warrior Hall. These invisible forces seemed to be able to converge into a sharp sword, revealing its sharpness and cutting through the heavens. The Blood Warriors were natural warriors, talents specially trained for small battles. Their powerful fighting intent was one of the Yang family's golden signboards. Even if they weren't fighting, the murderous intent radiating from the Blood Warriors would solidify and fill the air around the Blood Warrior Hall. Along the way, Yang Kai's expression also turned solemn when he sensed this frightening aura. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian both stood respectfully outside the Blood Warriors, quietly waiting for the arrival of Yang Kai. In front of them stood a tall and sturdy man with his hands crossed behind his back, wearing a black warrior's robe that could be seen anywhere. His physique was majestic, but his expression was indifferent, his long hair draped over his shoulders, giving him an air of superiority, his eyes like cold stars, giving him an intimidating aura. The Blood Warrior Hall's Hall Master, Feng Sheng, a peak Immortal Ascension Boundary Master who had made great contributions to the Yang family. After using his Mad Tyrant blood skill, he was even able to contend with an above Immortal Ascension Boundary Master. In the entire central capital, Feng Sheng was one of the few masters he had ever met. Since hearing Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian's report yesterday, Feng Sheng had become somewhat interested in the youngest young Lord Kai. Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiao were his subordinates, so as the Hall Master of the Blood Warrior Hall, he naturally cared about them. He wanted to see with his own eyes what the little lord who was willing to use Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiao was like. On this day, several Yang family young lords had arrived, but until now, the little lord still hadn't appeared. Feng Sheng didn't show any impatience though and just stood there quietly. Tu Feng was secretly anxious. Although Yang Kai had agreed to his and Tang Yuxian's request yesterday and he didn't doubt the authenticity of Yang Kai's words, to be honest, he really didn't know if Yang Kai had enough merits to exchange for Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiao. What if his merits weren't enough? Just as he was feeling anxious though, a tall young man suddenly appeared in his field of vision and walked over. "Is that him?" Feng Sheng asked. "It's him, it's the little lord." The big stone in Tu Feng's heart finally fell, and his whole body relaxed as he exchanged a glance with Tang Yuxian and smiled knowingly. The little lord is really a trustworthy person. Unfortunately, in this time's inheritance war, both of them couldn't help feeling deeply regretful. Walking up to him, Yang Kai raised his eyes and looked at Feng Sheng. His eyes flashed like lightning, his aura was rich, and his physique seemed to contain an unparalleled explosive power. Peak Immortal Ascension Boundary. Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he saw through this young man's true cultivation at a glance. If such a master were to fight against him, he would be able to kill him in a single blow. The huge gap in strength wasn't something an artifact or the unyielding golden skeleton could make up for. Although he was wearing ordinary clothes, Yang Kai could clearly feel that even though this young man was just standing there, he wasn't circulating any kind of secret art, but the world energy around him was still constantly flowing into his body, constantly condensing and refining his yuan qi, causing his yuan qi to become purer and richer, undoubtedly higher than others. He's a master from the Blood Warrior Hall. Yang Kai couldn't help but praise in his heart. The Yang family being able to stand tall for so many years and enjoy the title of first among the Central Capital's 8 great families was not without reason. While Yang Kai was observing Feng Sheng, the other party was also secretly observing him. He was dressed casually, not luxuriously, more simply than the average young lord from a prominent family. This kind of clothing was undoubtedly more suitable for sudden combat. He was very young, probably only around 18 years old, but his strength had already reached the Yuan Qi 8th stage. His expression was calm and his eyes seemed normal, but occasionally there was a flash of light. Feng Sheng's eyes couldn't help narrowing slightly as his expression became solemn. He felt a thick murderous aura from Yang Kai, one that was extremely strong and obvious. Feng Sheng also had a murderous aura, one that was even stronger than Yang Kai's. This kind of aura wasn't something that could be obtained through cultivation. It could only be left behind after killing people, and it had to kill a lot of people to create this kind of aura. This little lord was so young yet had already killed so many people, it seemed he wasn't an easy opponent to provoke. This was what Feng Sheng was concerned about. What made Feng Sheng feel even more strange was that there seemed to be another strange force in this little lord's body. This force seemed to affect his murderous aura, causing him to feel a chill run down his spine. It was as if even the violent aura he had been suppressing in his heart had been stirred up. Taking a closer look, Feng Sheng couldn't feel anything, only that his yuan qi was quite pure. Secretly shaking his head, Feng Sheng frowned. After a moment of silence, Feng Sheng knew that this little lord in front of him wasn't as simple as he seemed on the surface, but he didn't care too much and just asked lightly, "Young Lord Kai." Yang Kai nodded slightly and turned his eyes to Gu Feng and Tang Yuxian. The two of them quickly stepped forward and Tu Feng said, "Little Lord, this is our Hall Master, Feng Sheng." "So it's Hall Master Feng," Yang Kai exclaimed. "Since you've come for the Blood Warriors, please show me the document signed by the Elder Hall, Little Lord." Feng Sheng stretched out his hand and Yang Kai handed over the document. Taking a look at it, Feng Sheng gently nodded. His face, which had always been as calm as an ancient well, seemed to show some subtle changes as he said, "Young Lord Kai, please come in." Yang Kai stepped forward and Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian quickly welcomed him inside. Feng Sheng didn't follow him inside though, still standing straight at the door. After entering the Blood Warrior Hall, Tu Zheng chuckled, "Little Lord, I've never heard the Hall Master say, 'please,' to anyone." Today, there were a few young lords who came, but the Hall Master didn't even spare them a glance. "It seems the Hall Master's impression of you is quite good." Tang Yuxian also nodded heavily, seemingly having discovered something extraordinary. "Then my face is a bit big." Yang Kai grinned. Tu Feng nodded. "It's not about face, it's just that Little Lord is willing to use these two brothers. My Blood Warrior Hall is extremely grateful." "Is it really that serious?" Yang Kai couldn't help smiling. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Kai's footsteps came to a halt and he stared in front of him in amazement. In front of him, nearly 20 powerful blood warriors were lined up in several rows, all of them wearing solemn expressions as they stared towards Yang Kai with gratitude. The one leading them was the Blood Warrior Hall's Vice Hall Master, Zhou Feng, who was also a peak Immortal Ascension Boundary Master. Sweeping his eyes over the blood warriors, Yang Kai's expression became slightly solemn. Each one of them was extremely powerful, each of them as firm as a mountain. Regardless of whether they were men or women, all of them were masters among masters, the weakest of which was an Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Master. However, even an Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Master was no worse than an Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage Master from a first-class force. The Yang family blood warriors really had a rich heritage. With more than 20 pairs of eyes staring at him, Yang Kai also felt an unparalleled pressure. This kind of pressure wasn't deliberately released by the blood warriors, but rather the aura of the flowing Time Great Emperor. Therefore, in front of the strong, the weak would always be timid and restrained. Circulating his true Yang secret art, Yang Kai quickly circulated his pure Yuan Qi, stabilizing his footing. All the blood warriors' eyes lit up. Zhou Feng was also secretly surprised, but he didn't show it, only wearing a dignified expression as he cupped his fists and said, "On behalf of the Blood Warrior Hall, Zhou Feng offers his thanks to young Lord Kai." "Many thanks to young Lord Kai." In an instant, a thunderous roar resounded. Yang Kai's expression changed slightly, only now realizing that Tu Feng wasn't exaggerating. Although he had long known that there were gains and losses to be had, he hadn't expected to gain more than he had imagined. "We each took what we needed, don't worry about it." Yang Kai nodded gently, his eyes sweeping past Zhou Feng and landing on the two men behind him. These two men were probably less than 40 years old, but both of them had reached the Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage. The looks on their faces were even more dignified and serious than the blood warriors beside them, even the look in their eyes giving off a sense of loyalty and willingness to die for their friends. The two men stood there. Because of the unbearable pain, their bodies couldn't help but tremble slightly. Their close-fitting clothes were stained red everywhere, as if they were adorned with blooming plum blossoms, extremely dazzling to the eye. At their feet, the crimson blood had already formed a pool, and the air was filled with a faint smell of blood. However, the two men still stood upright, and the other blood warriors didn't even spare them a glance. "Are you Chu Gao Yi and Ing Jiu?" Yang Kai glanced at them. The two men quickly stepped forward and knelt on the ground. "Subordinate Chu Gao Yi. Subordinate Ing Jiu, greets little lord." Yang Kai nodded gently. "Stand up, since you are my people, I will use practical actions to prove that my choice was not wrong." The two men didn't say a word, silently getting up, but the look in their eyes was quite firm and persistent. Chapter 411. Seeing the expressions of Chu Gao Yi and Ing Jiu, Yang Kai nodded secretly. He knew that even if they were seriously injured, a blood warrior was still a blood warrior. Glancing around at the others, Yang Kai suddenly chuckled, "Everyone, if we become enemies in the future, this young lord won't show any mercy." Zhou Feng nodded firmly, "As it should be." Yang Kai turned around and left calmly while Chu Gao Yi and Ing Jiu cupped their fists to their brothers and sisters. After this farewell, when the blood warriors met again in the future, they may have to face off against each other, using their own blood and lives to write a glorious prelude to the Yang family's next generation. Everyone returned the gesture. They all understood. Outside the door, Feng Xing still stood there, waiting for Yang Kai to walk a few dozen meters before suddenly saying, "Young Lord Kai, I'll have to trouble you to take care of my two worthless subordinates." Yang Kai waved his hand and didn't say anything. Chu Gao Yi and Ing Jiu both stepped forward, leaving behind a blood trail behind them. All of the Yang family's direct descendants had returned to the central capital, and the family had given them nearly 2 months to prepare. After selecting their respective guardian blood warriors, the Yang family inheritance war that everyone had been looking forward to was finally about to begin. When the news spread, the central capital boiled over. The entire Great Han Dynasty was filled with turmoil. Large and small forces from all over the world were heading towards the central capital, hoping to gain some benefits in this huge event. Many of these forces had already arrived in the central capital. Many of them were sitting around waiting, hesitating, not knowing which young lords group to stand with. The Yang family young lords were even busier than before, contacting the young lords and young ladies of the other 7 families and trying to finalize their own allies. Central capital: 8 great families: Yang family, Qiu family, Lu family, Hua family, Kang family, Gao family, Yi family, Meng family. Among them, the Kang family, Gao family, Yi family, and Meng family had all sent out news that they had formed an alliance with different Yang family young lords. Only the remaining 3 families had yet to express their stance. The Lu family needn't be mentioned. Lu Qingyao had already declared that among the Yang family's younger generation, whoever could defeat him, he would be his ally. It was rumored that the Yang family first young lord Yang Wei had once fought with him. However, no one knew what the result. Lu Qingyao still hadn't clearly stated who he wanted to ally with, so the result of that battle was self-evident. Yang Wei was probably going to lose. As for the Hua family, Hua stars, the dissolute son of the Hua family, only sought pleasure all day long, drinking and throwing tantrums. It seemed that he had no intention of participating in the inheritance war at all, causing Hua Zheng a great headache. Hua Zheng also wanted to participate in the inheritance war, but unfortunately, his son wasn't up to the task, always running amok all day long, not even bothering with proper business, greatly angering him. If only the older generation could participate in the inheritance war. Then, Hua Zheng would have rolled up his sleeves long ago. On the other hand, when the young masters of the Yang family heard that Hua Stars and Yang Kai had some grudges, they all sought him out to persuade him, but none of them succeeded. Instead, they were all pulled into the brothel by him and spent a few nights there. One by one, they came out dizzy, shaking their heads and sighing that they were hopeless. Qiu family. In the study, the head of the Qiu family, Qiu Shouqing, was sitting on a chair. He looked to be in his 30s, but in reality he was already in his 50s. However, he was born with a delicate face, and his skin was much fairer than a woman's, so he looked much younger than his actual age. Sitting on either side of him was a man and a woman. The woman was the Qiu family's first young lady, Qiu Yimeng, and the man was the Qiu family's young lord, Qiu Ziruo. The two of them were half-siblings. The news that the inheritance war was about to begin had spread, so the Qiu family naturally had to choose their best team. However, Qiu Shouqing didn't know much about the Yang family's young lords. Although he had been inquiring about them, he still didn't know enough. The main purpose of the 7 great families participating in the inheritance war was to hone the strength of their young lords. Winning or losing wouldn't have much of an impact on their foundation. But if they could win, who would want to lose? Therefore, this matter had to be taken seriously. Qiu Shouqing stroked the goatee on his chin and pondered for a long time before asking, Ming, what do you think of this inheritance war? Hearing his father's question, Qiu Ziruo's expression became slightly bitter. In the Qiu family, although he was the first heir, whether it was personal strength or methods, he couldn't compare to his half-sister. If there was any major event in the family, his father would always find his sister to discuss it while he would sit on the sidelines and learn from her experience. He had always been like this since he was young. Qiu Yimeng smiled lightly and said, According to the information I received, the Yang family has sent 8 young lords to participate in the inheritance war. In addition to Yang Xinwu, who was ranked 4th, who is now deceased, the rest of the Yang family are Yang Wei, Yang Zhao, Yang Tai, Yang Kong, Yang Shen, Yang Ying, Yang Quan, and Yang Kai. Qiu Shouqing nodded lightly and did not interrupt, his eyes indicating for her to continue. Among them, the 2nd brother Yang Zhao and the 5th brother Yang Kong are blood brothers, while the 6th brother Yang Shen and the 7th brother Yang Ying are also blood brothers. These 2 pairs of brothers probably won't attack each other until the last moment and will only help each other out. This is the difference between blood relatives. Qiu Yimeng's thoughts turned quickly as she carefully phrased her words. So far, for have received assistance from the other 7 families. Among them, the Meng family's Meng Shan Yi was an ally of eldest brother Yang Wei, the Yi family's Yi Xen Ro was an ally of 2nd brother Yang Zhao, the Gao family's Gao Rangfeng was an ally of 5th brother Yang Kong, and the Kong family's Kong Zhan was an ally of 7th brother Yang Ying. The strength of the 7 families cannot be ignored and will, to a large extent, determine the final outcome of the inheritance war. Because the Yang family is based in the central capital, it is necessary to communicate with the other 7 families. Qiu Shouqing nodded gently, very satisfied with his daughter's meticulous thinking and intelligence-gathering ability, but when he remembered that she was a woman, he couldn't help feeling a little regretful. Glancing over at Qiu Ziruo, who was sitting next to him and looking somewhat resentful, Qiu Shouqing secretly sighed. So, from the results on the surface, There is no doubt that the pair of brothers, Yang Zhao and Yang Kong, have a relatively large chance of winning because each of them has a super force as an ally. And then, Qiu Shouqing heard his daughter's words and asked with a smile. In fact, that's not the case. Not to mention that the two of them are separated. Even if they help each other, they won't be invincible in the inheritance war. Over the years, in the inheritance war, the strength of the participants sent by the 7 families was not too high, mainly consisting of the younger generation. In order to avoid breaking the balance, they were also afraid of causing too many casualties. This was an unwritten rule. So, in addition to the Yang family blood warriors, the 8 great families won't send masters whose strength exceeds the immortal ascension boundary 5th stage into the inheritance war. In that case, the friends that those young masters made while they were training outside were very important. They made many friends. The number of allies and helpers that could be roped in were many. Moreover, the mothers of these young masters were mostly from first-class families. Those families would definitely lean towards these young masters. With the help of these forces, these young lords can also work hard to protect themselves and not be defeated quickly. Qiu Shouqing cast a look of approval as he smiled. Father, your daughter doesn't know who will have the last laugh in the inheritance war, but I do know. The Yang family's 3rd brother, Yang Tai, will definitely be the first to be eliminated. Why? Because he doesn't have a blood warrior to protect him. He has been out adventuring for the past few years but hasn't gained anything. Even with his contributions to the Yang family, he hasn't been able to obtain a blood warrior. Without a blood warrior to protect him, his strength isn't very high, his future is bleak. I'm afraid he won't last more than a day. Qiu Yimeng said confidently. The second one to be eliminated will definitely be 8th brother Yang Quan. He doesn't have the support of the 7 great families and his mother is only from a 2nd-class force. His mother's family won't be able to bring much help. And the 3rd one? Qiu Shouqing smiled. Your daughter doesn't know. Qiu Yimeng smiled bitterly and shook her head. It's not easy to judge the remaining young lords. 5th brother Yang Kong, 6th brother Yang Shen, and 7th brother Yang Ying are all possible candidates. Qiu Shouqing couldn't help but frown, a trace of confusion appearing on his face as he stared at his daughter with some confusion. Even Qiu Zirua, who had been standing to the side and hadn't spoken until now, chuckled and said, Elder sister, even I can see who the 3rd one will be eliminated. How come elder sister can't see it? Qiu Yimeng smiled lightly and turned to Qiu Zirua. What is little brother's opinion? I wouldn't dare. Qiu Zirua smiled faintly, but this matter is obvious. Ziru, tell me. Qiu Shouqing nodded to his son indifferently. Qiu Zirua glanced at his sister and said, the 3rd one to be eliminated must be the youngest, Yang Kai. Qiu Yimeng smiled sweetly, her expression unchanged, as if she knew he would come to this conclusion. As elder sister just said, this Yang Kai doesn't have any blood brothers who can help him, nor does he have the support of any of the other 7 families. Even if his mother's family has some support, at most, it's just a first-class force, nothing to be afraid of. On top of that, he's the youngest, and seems to be the same age as me, so he definitely doesn't have any means, so the 3rd one to be eliminated must be him. Qiu Zirua's words were resolute and decisive, as if he had already seen Yang Kai's end with his own eyes. Qiu Yimeng just smiled and didn't refute, instead turning to Qiu Shouqing and asking, does father also think so? Qiu Shouqing hesitated for a moment before nodding lightly. Yes, I have the same idea as your brother. According to the information I received, after returning to the central capital, he seems to have never contacted any of the other 7 families' young lords and has not made any efforts to win them over. Father can assume he has no confidence in himself and has already given up on the inheritance war. Qiu Yimeng firmly shook her head. Father, I don't agree with your opinion. On the contrary, I intend to turn our Qiu family into his support. Qiu Zirua stared at her like she was a fool and muttered, Elder sister, are you still dreaming? How can you say such nonsense? Qiu Shouqing also frowned and said, Meng, I know you know Yang Kai and have been with him for some time. Lu Liang has already sent me a letter about this matter and reported back to me about what he did in the Lu family, so I'm not very optimistic about him. If you want to turn our Qiu family into his support, you need to give me a convincing reason, otherwise, father won't agree. Winning or losing the inheritance war won't affect the foundation of my Qiu family, but there will still be some losses. Chapter 412. Reason? I can't explain it clearly, but father, from childhood to now, when have I ever disappointed you? Qiu Shoucheng's expression became serious as he thought about it carefully. His daughter's vision was quite accurate. Over the past few years, when he didn't understand something, as soon as he explained it to her, she would immediately understand and often give him a lot of good ideas. Seeing Qiu Yimeng speak so seriously, Qiu Shoucheng couldn't help but re-examine his daughter and ask, "What exactly is so special about this person that you care so much about?" Qiu Yimeng still slowly shook her head. "I really can't explain it, but this person is very mysterious. Often in impossible situations, he is able to do some incredible things." She wanted to tell her father that the ash-gray cloud Evil Land's beguiling demon queen had been captivated by Yang Kai, but after thinking about it, she decided not to. After all, the ash-gray cloud Evil Land was a place where evil demons gathered, and Shanqing Luo was one of the 6 great evil kings. Her relationship with the central capital's 8 great families had always been like fire and water, so in this inheritance war, whether Shanqing Luo would help him was still uncertain. Without the assistance of the beguiling demon queen, Yang Kai's support would be greatly reduced. What made your eyes light up? Qiu Shoucheng's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked meaningfully. Qiu Zirua raised his brow and chuckled. It seems that elder sister has finally met a man she can satisfy. I thought there was no man in this world who could enter your eyes. Between father and son, one was suspicious while the other was interested, obviously thinking that Qiu Yimeng had been moved by Yang Kai. I do have a good impression of him. Unexpectedly, Qiu Yimeng frankly admitted. But that's just a good feeling because when I get along with him, I'm always in a passive position. Qiu Shoucheng's expression changed slightly as he asked in surprise, "Is this little brat really that strong?" This daughter of his, even in the central capital, no one could force her to always be in a passive position. She had always been the one leading others by the nose. So although this comment was ordinary, Qiu Shoucheng still managed to glean some incredible information from it. A very strong man. Qiu Yimeng smiled lightly, remembering Yang Kai's attitude towards her. He couldn't help but gnash his teeth. Love can make a person stupid. Qiu Zirua shook his head like an old man, as if he was a veteran in the field of love. Father. Qiu Yimeng knew that her half-brother had always had a problem with her. She didn't want to argue with him, so she just smiled and said, "Let's not talk about my opinion of him first. Let's talk about your opinion. You judged him to be the 3rd to be eliminated, first because you found out the information yourself. Second, I'm afraid you were also influenced by Lu Liang's message, right?" "Not bad." Qiu Shoucheng nodded, stroking his goatee as he said, although Lu Liang didn't comment on this little brat in the letter, only describing his actions in the Lu family, I can still see Lu Liang's contempt for him. What if it's just a disguise? Qiu Shoucheng was taken aback and said solemnly, "Then this boy is too cunning. He can even deceive Lu Liang. Lu Liang is not someone who can be easily fooled." Qiu Yimeng chuckled, got up from her chair, walked a few steps, then turned around and said, "Father. In fact, I was also hesitant about whether to tie the Qiu family to him. At least before today, I hadn't made up my mind. But now, I feel more and more that my judgment was not wrong. But it's because of his inaction. His inaction in the Lu family, his inaction after returning to the central capital. In the Lu family, he didn't win over Lu Liang, and when he returned to the central capital, he didn't make friends with any of the 7 great families. But after spending some time with him, I know that he is not the kind of person who is willing to be mediocre. This person's appetite has always been big. Either he doesn't do anything, or he does something, never giving his enemy time to breathe. His lack of action is a clear indication of his confidence." Qiu Yimeng frowned and slowly shook her head. I really don't know where his confidence comes from, but he definitely has it. Elder sister, in the end, all of this is just your own guess and feeling. We haven't seen him with any kind of support or helper. Qiu Shouqing frowned and nodded. Meng? You said before that you didn't consider forming an alliance with him. Do you have any other candidates in mind? Hearing her father say this, Qiu Yimeng suddenly realized that her efforts just now had not worked. Her father still wasn't optimistic about Yang Kai. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked such a question. And in addition to Yang Kai, I have two other candidates. One is the eldest brother, Yang Wei, and the other is the second brother, Yang Zhao. There's no need to mention Yang Zhao. He is a very powerful person and is the son of the current Yang family patriarch. His chances of winning have always been very high, but Yang Wei is also extraordinary. He is the only immortal ascension boundary master of the Yang family's younger generation and is also the eldest brother, so both of them have great hopes. Saying so, Qiu Yimeng smiled bitterly, but now, both of them have allies from the 7 great families. If my Qiu family were to intervene, I'm afraid it wouldn't be very good. And, in that case, even if we win, my Qiu family won't obtain much benefit. Qiu Shouqing pondered for a moment before suddenly turning to his son and asking, Ziruo, what do you think? Qiu Ziruo smiled happily, knowing that his opportunity had come. This was the first time his father had taken the initiative to ask for his opinion, and this was a matter as important as the inheritance war, so Qiu Ziruo naturally understood the profound meaning behind it. In my opinion, since we want to participate in the inheritance war, we should find a young family member who doesn't have any of the 7 great families as an ally. This way, after he wins, my Qiu family can eat the spoils alone. Qiu Ziruo wasn't a stupid person. After listening to his father and sister for so long, he naturally had a plan in mind and said, My idea is to form an alliance with the 6th brother, Yang Shen. His brother, the 7th brother Yang Ying, already has the Kong family as an ally, so with my Qiu family, our chances of winning are very high. At the very least, we can compete with Yang Zhao and Yang Kong. Qiu Shouqing smiled and nodded approvingly. Perceiving his father's look of praise, Qiu Ziruo knew that he had spoken his father's mind and couldn't help breathing a little faster, his face flushing red with excitement. Qiu Yimeng shook her head helplessly and sighed. Even if she performed well, in the end, she was still a woman. The Qiu family was not something she could inherit in the future. Her destiny was ultimately just to be a chess piece used in a marriage alliance to bring more benefits to the Qiu family. The room fell into silence for a while as Qiu Shouqing tapped his fingers on his chair, his brow furrowed as he pondered, apparently weighing the pros and cons. After a long time, his eyes became firm and he said, Since that's the case, then this time's inheritance war, Father. Qiu Yimeng quickly interrupted him. What's wrong? Qiu Shouqing's brow furrowed slightly as he looked at her with some displeasure. Father, for this time's inheritance war, your daughter wants to take a team to Yang Kai. Qiu Yimeng grit her teeth, although she knew that saying this would make her father unhappy. Qiu Yimeng felt that her judgment was definitely not wrong. Qiu Ziruo couldn't help but laugh. Staring at his daughter for a long time, Qiu Shouqing faintly asked, Do you insist? Your daughter has never asked you for anything, but this time, I insist. Please allow your daughter to act presumptuously. Good, then I'll assign the family's autumn rain hall to you. Qiu Shouqing quickly said. Thank you, father. Qiu Yimeng smiled bitterly. The autumn rain hall wasn't a very important hall in the Qiu family, and the strength of the people inside wasn't very high. For her father to assign such a hall to her, it was obvious that he was prepared to sacrifice the entire autumn rain hall. If she hadn't been so resolute, her father probably wouldn't have even given her the autumn rain hall. Since that was the case, time would tell who was right and who was wrong, and who was more suitable to inherit the Qiu family. Qiu Yimeng's eyes became firm as a fierce light flashed across her eyes. Withdraw. Qiu Shouqing waved his hand, and Qiu Yimeng bowed and withdrew. Walking out of the room, she heard the soft voices of her father and younger brother talking, causing Qiu Yimeng to feel even more uncomfortable. Night, clear sky in's backyard hall, Bamboo Knot Gang's headquarters. Yang Kai looked at the stack of silver bills in front of him with a dull expression. Behind him stood two men who were like iron towers. These two men quietly stood there, and ever since they entered, they had not said a single word. However, their faces were as pale as paper, and from time to time, cold sweat would seep out from their foreheads. From time to time, a ferocious expression would flash across their faces. It was obvious that they were enduring great pain, and the clothes on their bodies were also dyed red from the inside, as if they were embroidered with gorgeous flower buds. Beneath their feet, there was a trail of blood. Bamboo Knot Gang's sect Master Pang Chi and Vice Sect Master Moon and Do stood cautiously to the side, from time to time glancing at the two men who seemed to be on the verge of death. They didn't quite understand why Yang Kai had brought such people with him. These past few days, with the combined strength of our two sects, we have already swallowed up two small forces. My Bamboo Knot Gang's strength has soared, and we have also collected a lot of materials and money. Young Lord Kai, the accounts are all here, not a penny less. Pang Chi respectfully handed over an account book and placed it in front of Yang Kai. No need. Yang Kai shook his head. Convert all these silver bills into materials. Raise the requirements a bit, at least heaven-grade materials, the more expensive the better. In addition, how many forces are there in the North City District that can be swallowed up? If Brother Mu's information is correct, there should be 4 or 5 more, Pang Chi replied. Good, the two of you, take one person with you and go conquer those 4 or 5 forces. Yang Kai stretched out his hand and pointed behind him. Take them? Pang Chi and Moon and Do were suddenly dumbfounded, somewhat stunned as they turned to look at the two bloody men behind Yang Kai. What could these two people possibly do? Pang Chi and Moon and Do didn't even dare to speak too loudly, fearing that their voices would shock them to death, so when they heard Yang Kai's words, they couldn't help feeling puzzled. Chapter 413. Inside the Bamboo Knot Gang's main hall, Pang Chi and Moon and Do stared at the two men behind Yang Kai with stunned expressions. Do you have a problem? One of the two men who seemed to be on the verge of death coldly snorted, a huge divine sense suddenly sweeping out. Feeling the power contained in this divine sense, Pang Chi and Moon and Do's expressions changed greatly, realizing that these two men weren't mediocre at all. This kind of extraordinary divine sense alone was enough to sweep up all the small forces in the North City District. Quickly restraining their expressions, they waved their hands in panic. We wouldn't dare. Go. Yang Kai waved his hand. Without seeing the two towering men behind him take any action, Pang Chi and Moon and Do were wrapped in a powerful force and instantly disappeared from the main hall, leaving only a faint smell of blood in the air. After Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiu disappeared, Yang Kai smiled slightly. It had been 5 days since he had obtained the two of them. The two blood warriors were seriously injured and should have been in bed to heal, but Yang Kai had turned a blind eye to their physical condition, as if he couldn't wait for them to die early, taking them wherever he went. During these 5 days, Yang Kai hadn't spoken a word to them, nor had he given them any instructions. However, to Yang Kai's relief, he didn't feel the slightest impatience or unwillingness from Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiu's expressions. Right now, they could only display less than 30% of their peak strength. However, if they wanted to sweep up the small forces in the central capital, it wouldn't be a problem. There was no time. Yang Kai originally wanted Pang Chi and Moon and Do to slowly nibble away at the small forces, but the inheritance war was about to begin. He couldn't afford to wait that long. In desperation, he had dispatched the two blood warriors to help him. Standing up, Yang Kai turned to the other Bamboo Knot Gang elder and said, "Take me to your storehouse." The Bamboo Knot Gang had nibbled away two small forces and at Yang Kai's request had purchased a lot of alchemy and artifact refining materials. Currently, they are all stored in the storehouse. Yang Kai walked into the black book space for a moment before coming out again, filling it with many good things. 5 days ago, Yang Zhen from the Hall of Elders sent over a large batch of materials. Now, Yang Kai's storage was already on a small scale. The efficiency of the Elder Hall was quite high. On that day, Yang Kai only said that he would exchange all his remaining merits for materials, and the matter was settled that very night. looking at the rich materials on the two carriages. Whether it was Yang Kai or his parents, they were all shocked. Those materials were all heaven grade and above, and a tenth of them were even profound grade. The other half were alchemy and artifact refining. Fortunately, the Yang family had a solid foundation. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to take out so many materials. Yang Yingfeng hadn't expected that after Yang Kai had exchanged for 2 blood warriors, he would still have such a large amount of merit left over. Yang Kai didn't expect this either. The father and son pair were stunned for a while before they recovered. Now, all these things were stored in the black book space. Have Pang Qi continue to collect materials. When he has enough, send them to War City. Yang Kai said before striding away. War City. It was a city the Yang family had built specifically for the inheritance war. It was only 100 kilometers away from the central capital. Yes. The Bamboo Knot Gang's elder quickly responded. After Yang Kai left, he suddenly felt a little confused. How did this young lord just walk around the storehouse and come out? He didn't seem to have taken anything. Poking his head out to take a look, this elder was suddenly scared out of his wits. The materials that were originally placed in the storehouse. But now they were all gone. What should I do? 3 days later, the Yang family's heaven altar. A majestic building stood erect. The ground was flat and tidy, and had long been covered with a large red carpet. The altar for heaven worship was majestic and grand, and 2 huge stone pillars pierced the clouds. On the stone pillars, there were various lifelike carvings of dragons and phoenixes soaring to the 9th heaven. There were no clouds in the sky for thousands of miles. The blue sky was clear as if it had been washed clean. The wind whistled, blowing the Yang clan's blood-red banner, causing it to flutter in the wind. Nearly 1,000 Yang family cultivator, all wearing black uniforms, gathered around the huge heaven altar. Thousands of people, breathing in unison, their auras synchronized, each breath seemingly capable of sweeping through the world. Directly below the heaven altar, the 8 Yang family's younger generation's young lords, who had already bathed and changed their clothes, stood in order of seniority, looking up in the direction of the heaven altar. A loud shout came, Qiu family's patriarch Qiu Shouqing has arrived. Yi family's patriarch Yi Kuang has arrived. Meng family's patriarch Meng Shiping has arrived. The Yang family's inheritance war, which only happened once every few decades, was the largest and most lively event in the central capital. Naturally, the other 7 families of the central capital would not neglect this occasion, all of them personally led by their respective patriarchs. The Yang family young lords led these guests to their arranged seats, sat down, and drank tea. Half an hour later, all the patriarchs of the 7 families arrived. With a flash of blue light, the Yang family's patriarch Yang Yinghao, along with several grand elders who had reached the above immortal ascension boundary, appeared at the heaven altar. As soon as the host appeared, Qiu Shouqing and the others got up and cupped their fists. Yang Yinghao returned the gesture and shouted, "Today is the day my Yang family offers sacrifices to the heavens and ancestors. Thank you all for coming. Please sit down." Qiu Shouqing, Yiquang Ren, Meng Shiping, and the others nodded lightly, their eyes shining brightly as they returned to their seats. Yang Kai's eyes were fixed on Yang Yinghao. According to seniority, this person should be his eldest uncle. His real age was probably only a dozen years older than 4th Master Yang. But now, Yang Yinghao's hair looked gray, as if he was in his twilight years, and there were even deep wrinkles on his face. Before the decisive battle in the ash-gray cloud Evil Land, he was not like this. At that time, he was in his middle age, and although he was not young, he was not so old. The reason for this was because he had been injured by the profound Yin Ghost King and the annihilating Poison King in the ash-gray cloud Evil Land's final battle. After returning to the family, he had used the Yang family's life and death samsara secret art in exchange for 30 years of his lifespan. In order to expel his own injuries. The position of patriarch of the Yang family was extremely important, so even though he knew the price of 30 years of lifespan was too great, Yang Yinghao had no choice but to ensure his own integrity. This was not the aftermath of a simple injury, but rather the most direct form of life loss. Yang Yinghao looked extremely old. It was precisely because he didn't know how long he could live. That was why he was so anxious to recall all the Yang family's direct descendants to begin the inheritance war. Yang Zhao and Yang Kong both looked at their father and felt sad. Yang Yinghao, on the other hand, remained indifferent and briefly explained the rules of the inheritance war. There were no rules. The Yang family would only provide blood warriors to serve as retainers for the young lords of the Yang family, and the blood warriors would be greatly restricted in the inheritance war. In addition, the Yang family would not provide any direct help to the young lords. Whether it was open spears, hidden arrows, or schemes, who would have the last laugh? Who would be the victor of the inheritance war? Do you all remember? Yang Yinghao looked at the 8 people standing below and asked. Everyone nodded. Then let's offer sacrifices to the heavens and our ancestors. Yang Yinghao waved his hand and shouted. All kinds of preparations had already been made, and in front of the solemn altar, an incense burner rose and a hard-to-find 6th-order monster beast was carried up. Yang Yinghao killed it, its blood spilling onto the altar. Offering blood to the heavens, offering a beast to the ancestors. The ceremony was very complicated, and under the guidance of Yang Yinghao, the 8 young lords of the Yang family. Meticulously, they completed their tasks. Throughout this process, the masters of the 7 families also watched carefully, secretly observing the performance of the 8 people, observing whether the allies their sons and daughters had chosen were suitable, and whether the enemy was strong. Finally, after paying respects to the Yang family's ancestors, the whole ceremony was finally completed. This time, if you don't die then I will, you're on your own. Yang Yinghao shouted, waving his hand and shouting, set off. 8 extremely handsome cloud-treading colts roared over and stopped in front of the 8 young lords. The 8 young lords of the Yang family each mounted their mounts. The wind suddenly stopped, and the atmosphere in the air suddenly seemed a bit stagnant. Even the breathing of the 1,000 people present suddenly stopped. The 8 young lords glanced at each other and smiled slightly. Even if they were brothers, once they left the central capital, they would be enemies. I won't show mercy. Me too, big brother will go first. Yang Wei quickly said, his voice falling as the cloud-treading colts flew off. Follow me. Yang Zhao chuckled. The 8 cloud-treading colts galloped down the Yang family's special passage, kicking up a cloud of dust as they rushed forward. This old master will go watch the fun. The Kong family patriarch, Kong Rui, grinned meaningfully, waving his hand and wrapping his followers in pure yuan qi before disappearing like a bolt of lightning. Let's go together. The Gao family patriarch, Gao Mo, followed closely behind. This old master will also go. The Kong family patriarch, Kong Zheng, was not willing to be outdone. In the blink of an eye, the people from the 7 great clans had all left, disappearing without a trace. Ignorant of etiquette, Yang Yinghao coldly snorted, blaming these old fogies for not even bothering to inform him before leaving. Along the way, the 8 cloud-treading colts galloped forward while the 7 groups of people flew up into the sky. A moment later, they had exited the south gate. Outside the south gate, it seemed to be even livelier than the Yang family's heaven altar. Countless forces, large and small, were waiting. They all knew that today was the start of the inheritance war, so naturally, they had all been waiting here early in order to follow their Yang family young lords to War City. Outside the south gate, there was a dense crowd of people. Even from a few kilometers away, there were still people secretly observing. Which young lord is your Changyang Valley going to follow this time? A familiar face asked. Of course it's the 6th young lord, Yang Shen. Don't go, you'll definitely lose. Follow our flying cloud manor and follow the 2nd young lord, Yang Zhao. The 2nd young lord has much more potential than the 6th young lord. Really? Naturally, come here, I'll tell you, I know a lot of inside information. The 2 of them put their arms around each other's shoulders and whispered to one another. Third-class forces such as Changyang Valley and Flying Cloud Manor had no way to form any kind of friendship with the Yang family's direct descendants. Before the start of the inheritance war, they had no chance to meet the Yang family's young lords, so they could only wait here. They didn't know much about the inside of the Yang family, so most of them just followed whichever young lord they found pleasing to the eye. Chapter 4:14. In front of the south gate, 7 groups of people suddenly appeared, and all the cultivators from the various forces who had gathered at the gate were pushed back by an invisible force. After everyone stood firm and stared forward in amazement, not only did they not dare show any anger, they were instead pleasantly surprised. The patriarchs of the 7 families had all appeared at the same time. These master and young masters were not ordinary people. Coming to the central capital this time had been the right decision. Just seeing these 7 was worth the trip back. For a time, many of the cultivators' eyes filled with excitement as they stared towards the 7 patriarchs in awe. On the other hand, the 7 patriarchs stared towards the central capital with a look of interest on their faces. The moment they left the central capital was also the moment to test the charm of the Yang family young lords. Naturally, they wanted to know which young lord these cultivators who had been waiting outside the south gate would follow. With the sound of wind and lightning, 8 cloud-treading colts appeared one after another. The 8 Yang family young lords who were participating in the inheritance war appeared. The Meng family's Meng Shan quickly urged his mount forward and cupped his fists to Yang Wei. "Young Lord Wei, you've been waiting for a long time." Yang Wei's expression remained indifferent as he nodded calmly. The 2 of them had long been in an alliance, so it was not surprising that they were acting so close at this moment. The Yi family's Yi Xen-ro leisurely stepped forward, a faint blush on her charming face. She was in her 20s, her skin was white as snow, her figure was graceful, and her expression was shy yet charming. She smiled and said, "Young Master Zhao." Yang Zhao laughed, bending over and extending his hand to Yi Xen-ro, his expression as gentle as jade. "Come up." Yi Xen-ro nodded slightly. Grabbing Yang Zhao's big hand, she leapt forward and sat down atop one of the cloud-treading colts in front of him. The patriarchs of the other 6 families all shot meaningful glances towards the Yi family patriarch, Yi Kuang-ren. In front of so many people, a man and a woman acting so intimate, it didn't seem like they were simply allies. Perhaps there was some kind of inside story behind this. Yi Kuang-ren's expression remained indifferent. He didn't seem to have any intention of criticizing his daughter's boldness, as if he already knew. At the same time, Gao Rangfeng and Yang Kong were chatting happily. Kang Zhan and Yang Ying smiled at each other. The 4 great families had made their positions clear, so the 4 young lords were proud of themselves. This was a stage for the younger generation. "Old Xiao, has your Qiu family not made a decision yet?" Hu Zheng looked at him anxiously. His heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat, but looking left and right, he didn't see his good-for-nothing son present. He knew that he must be having a romantic affair somewhere, so he suddenly felt annoyed. Turning his head, he found Qiu Shouqing standing alone by his side, and could not help but feel a sense of sympathy for him. "Isn't that already a choice?" Qiu Shouqing smiled. Hu Zheng was stunned for a moment, but when he looked over again he was surprised to find that Qiu Zirua and Yang Shen were together. Yang Shen was also overjoyed. He treated Qiu Zirua very politely. Hu Zheng couldn't help feeling surprised. "Oh, old Qiu, this time the Qiu family is participating in the inheritance war. Is your son leading the team?" Qiu Shouqing had a son and a daughter, but there was a natural chasm between the 2. Qiu Yimeng's name had already spread throughout the central capital. She was ranked 2nd among the younger generation of the central capital. Everyone had thought that this time the inheritance war would be led by Qiu Yimeng, but now it was actually Qiu Zirua who would appear here. "My son is all grown up, I need to let him experience the world." Qiu Shouqing chuckled. "The inheritance war is a rare opportunity." Kang Zheng curled his lips and sneered, "Old Qiu. It's not that I don't want to be rude, but my family's little brat is just a pile of mud. Although your family's little brat is a bit better, he's not much better. I think you should pass the position of family patriarch to your daughter. If you really pass it on to your son, the Qiu family will sooner or later be finished." Qiu Shouqing coldly snorted, "This old master doesn't need you to interfere." Hu Zheng rolled his eyes. "You don't know how to appreciate good intentions." On the field, After the 5 great families had expressed their stance one after another, the large and small forces who had been observing finally couldn't hold back, and one of them hurriedly rushed up to Yang Wei, cupped his fists, and said, "This one is 3 sacred sects' chief disciple, Xian Li, and is willing to follow eldest young lord." Yang Wei glanced at him and nodded gently, "Good." Xian Li couldn't help but express his gratitude and quickly stood behind Yang Wei. With this 3 sacred sects Xian Li taking the lead, the young leaders of the various forces quickly stepped forward and pledged their allegiance to the Yang family young lords they had already chosen. For a time, the scene was lively. Looking at the crowd, the eldest brother Yang Wei and the second brother Yang Zhao undoubtedly received the most support. Whenever someone came forward to join them, Yang Wei would gently nod to them while Yang Zhao would greet them with a warm smile. The 2 brothers had different personalities, and this was vividly displayed at this moment. In addition to the 2 of them, the 5th brother Yang Kong, 6th brother Yang Xin, and 7th brother Yang Ying had also gathered a lot of support in a short time. Only the 3rd brother Yang Tai, 8th brother Yang Quan, and the youngest, Yang Kai, were completely deserted. The difference in the personal connections and charm of these brothers was obvious at a glance. Yang Tai and Yang Quan glanced at each other and both smiled bitterly, knowing that the 2 of them definitely had no hope in this inheritance war. "Little brother Kai, don't worry about it," Yang Tai suddenly whispered to Yang Kai. Yang Quan nodded gently, "You're better off than us. At the very least, you have 2 blood warriors and a first-class force from your mother's family." Of the 2 of them, one only had a single blood warrior while the other didn't even have a single blood warrior. "I don't care." Yang Kai slowly shook his head, not showing the slightest sense of loss, but his eyes remained fixed on 2 of the dozen or so blood warriors in front of him. These blood warriors were all selected by the Yang family young lords to participate in the inheritance war. Among them, Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiu stood in the middle with pale faces. Anyone with discerning eyes could see at a glance that these 2 blood warriors were seriously injured and had yet to recover, their blood force fluctuating erratically. Obviously their strength had been greatly reduced. If they weren't treated and rested, it was likely they would either die or become crippled. However, the 2 of them stood there with firm expressions, not moving at all. Only when Yang Kai cast his gaze towards them did they involuntarily straighten their waists. What Yang Kai was looking at was not the 2 of them, but rather the other man and woman, Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian. Both of them smiled helplessly at Yang Kai. They didn't want to be enemies, but Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian were both chosen by the Yang family young lords from the Blood Warrior Hall. In this time's inheritance war, they were destined to become enemies. It was just that Yang Kai didn't know who these 2 were following. Grinning at the 2 of them, Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian couldn't help feeling a chill run down their spines. Every time the little lord smiled like this, it meant he was about to do something bad. They really didn't want to become enemies with him. Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian both smiled bitterly. Although they were far stronger than Yang Kai, Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian didn't know why, but they still respected him from the bottom of their hearts. Not long after, the large and small forces were divided up by the 5 Yang family young lords who had hopes of winning the Blood Warrior Hall. Yang Tai and Yang Quan's expressions became more and more lost. The patriarchs of the 7 great families were all commenting on the Yang family young lords, but Qiu Shoucheng's expression was one of shock. Since that night when he heard his daughter's evaluation of Yang Kai, Qiu Shoucheng had been paying some attention to this young man. Today, after carefully observing him, he found that although this young man hadn't won the allegiance of any of the forces, his expression had remained unchanged. On the contrary, his pair of bright eyes were filled with a strong sense of self-confidence. Qiu Shoucheng was secretly amazed. The eye contact between Yang Kai, Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian did not escape his observation, which made Qiu Shoucheng even more puzzled. A Yang family young lord without support was equivalent to a tiger without claws. What kind of waves could he possibly stir up in the inheritance war? In such an embarrassing situation, Yang Kai didn't show the slightest embarrassment, instead remaining calm from beginning to end, as if he had full confidence in himself. Moreover, why did the 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage Blood Warriors seem to be afraid of him? Qiu Shoucheng couldn't help thinking to himself and couldn't help raising his evaluation of Yang Kai slightly. Perhaps he really did have some kind of heritage, but it was definitely not enough to win in the inheritance war. From the current situation, it could be seen that he wasn't qualified to participate in the final battle of the inheritance war. The various forces had been divided up, so the Yang family young lords were naturally ready to set off for War City. Yang Wei tightened his grip on the reins and was preparing to lead the way when suddenly, a steady tapping sound came from afar. Outside the south gate, the silence was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop, so this sudden tapping sound was extremely harsh. Following the sound, everyone turned their heads and looked in that direction. They saw a cloud-treading colt approaching. A young man with an unruly smile on his face sat on the back of the cloud-treading colt. His arms were crossed in front of his chest as he rode the cloud-treading colt. His eyes flashed with a strange light as they constantly roamed the bodies of the beautiful women in the crowd. Being stared at by this young man, no matter which woman it was, they all felt as if they had been stripped naked, causing them to shiver involuntarily. The Hua family patriarch Hua Zheng's face instantly became livid, because the one who had come was none other than his useless son, Hua Xingqin. Not far away, Yang Kai and Hua Xing glanced at each other, the latter showing a trace of disdain and provocation as his lips curled up slightly. That night, Hua Xing led the Profound Light Gang to attack the Bamboo Knot Gang. Yang Kai had rushed over to help and captured Hua Xing, forming a grudge between them. Later, Yang Kai had ruthlessly extorted a large sum of money from him, forcing him to give up on the Profound Light Gang. Now that they met again, Hua Xing naturally didn't give him any face. This young lord isn't late, right? Arriving in front of everyone, Hua Xing stopped and smiled, sweeping his eyes around before nodding. Fortunately, it looks like I came in time. Chapter 415. Before the Yang family young lords returned to the central capital, there were 3 famous youngsters in the central capital. The first was Lu Qingyao, the second was Qiu Yimeng, and the third was Hua Stars. However, while the first 2 were famous in the central capital, the last one was infamous. Everyone in the central capital knew that the Hua family's sole young lord was an extravagant and unrestrained man. When beautiful young women saw him from a distance, they would all hurriedly avoid him to avoid being abducted by him. Every family with a young woman in the central capital would have a portrait of Hua Stars' head in order to remember his appearance. To some extent, Hua Stars' name was even more famous than Lu Qingyao and Qiu Yimeng. He was nicknamed the Central Capital Wolf. Wherever the Central Capital Wolf Hua Stars passed, the wind and clouds would change color, the earth would tremble, and the children of the Central Capital would stop crying upon hearing his name. At this moment, the Central Capital Wolf young lord Hua sat casually on the back of his cloud-treading colt, his arms crossed in front of his chest. Even after seeing so many elders, he didn't show any intention of dismounting and saluting, causing the other patriarchs to secretly shake their heads. "Where did you go last night?" Hua Zheng glared at him and asked sharply. "Secluded cultivation." Hua Stars blurted out. Hua Zheng suddenly became furious, stomping his feet and shouting, "Bastard! What's with that lipstick mark on your face?" Outside the south gate, a burst of laughter suddenly broke out. Hua Stars didn't show the slightest embarrassment, instead just glancing around with a sneer. The laughter suddenly stopped. Even though this Central Capital Wolf's reputation wasn't very good, he was still a young lord of one of the 8 great families. He wasn't someone these people could mock. What's more, he was also the sole young lord of the Hua family, so he couldn't be provoked. If they continued to laugh, he might remember their faces and die without even knowing how they died. Hua Zheng shook his head, his face filled with resentment. "Why aren't you fooling around in the Spring Breeze Pavilion? What are you doing here?" Hua Stars smiled and said, "Father, didn't you say the Yang family's inheritance war was a rare opportunity? Your son thought about it and felt my Hua family naturally had to participate in such a big matter. Otherwise, wouldn't others look down on our Hua family?" Hearing his words, Hua Zheng couldn't help but be overjoyed. The displeasure and annoyance from before had long been thrown out of his mind. Quickly asking, "You mean, You want to participate in the inheritance war? That's exactly what I'm thinking. That way, I won't let you down. Huastars replied seriously. Hu Zheng was overjoyed. He slapped his thigh and said, "Good, good, good. You finally understand. It's not too late to understand now. Come down, come down." As he spoke, Hu Zheng rushed forward and attentively helped his son down from the back of the cloud-treading colt like a manservant. Not only did he not feel that there was anything wrong with such a doting approach, but he also felt that there was nothing wrong with it. Instead, he was full of smiles. Of course, Hu Zheng would be happy. No matter what he said to his stars before, his son was unwilling to participate in the inheritance war. Compared to the inheritance war, he was more willing to drink and have fun. This led Hu Zheng to think that in this inheritance war, he was afraid that the Hua family would have nothing to do with it, so he had always been unhappy. But unexpectedly, on the day of the inheritance war, his son actually ran over and took the initiative to ask to participate. Naturally, this made him overjoyed. Hu Zheng smiled. Waving his hand, he pointed to a spot not far away and said, "These are the 8 young lords of the Yang family. Son, choose one carefully. Once you do, father will leave the star door to you." Really? Huastars raised his brow, a wretched expression appearing on his face. Naturally, in front of your other elders, how could this old master joke with you? Hu Zheng said seriously. Good, I like it. Huastars grinned obscenely. The words of this father and son pair reached the ears of many Yang family young lords, causing their breaths to quicken slightly. Star door. The Hua family was a very special force. It was composed entirely of women. Not only were these women beautiful, but their strength was also quite good. More importantly, because they were women, they practiced light cultivation methods and martial skills, so they were always in charge of assassinations and assassinations. If such a force was in their hands, it would be a great help, but if it was an enemy, it would definitely be troublesome. So when they heard Hu Zheng mention the star door, whether it was Huastars or the Yang family young lords, all of them were full of interest. Huastar's expression was casual as his eyes swept over the Yang family young lords one by one. Except for Yang Wei, who still wore a cold expression, everyone else smiled and cupped their fists. Obviously, they wanted to win his favor in the hope that he would stand on their side. Hu Zheng also waited with a smile. He wanted to know who his son would choose. After a moment, Hu Xingchen's eyes fell on Yang Kai, a playful expression appearing on his face as a cold smile appeared on his face, nodding, "You." Yang Kai frowned as he glanced over at Huastars, a strange expression appearing on his face. He hadn't expected that Huastars would choose him. This was completely illogical. Yang Kai had a grudge with him, so as long as he was a normal person, he would choose someone else to suppress him in order to achieve the purpose of revenge, but now, his choice made Yang Kai somewhat confused. Hu Zheng was also stunned for a moment. Young Lord Kai. Huastars replied with a smile. The 7 great families' patriarchs frowned slightly while Qiu Shoucheng was even more confused. Father, hand over the star door to me now. Huastars said excitedly, the star door and my name match, so I should be the one to manage it. Father, you're old, you should let go, lest those beauties be left alone. Hu Zheng's old face flushed red with anger as he opened his mouth a few times, seemingly wanting to curse, but in front of everyone's eyes, he couldn't bring himself to do so. After holding back for a long time, he angrily shouted, "Bastard! I don't agree." Huastars said in surprise, Father, why are you talking like a fart? Just now, you said you would hand over the star door to me, but now you're going back on your word. Do you have any shame? Even though the various patriarchs had deep self-restraint, at this moment, they couldn't help feeling the urge to laugh, but they all pretended to be deaf and mute, suppressing their laughter. It was extremely difficult. Hu Zheng's anger soared to the heavens. Father said I would hand over the star door to you if you made your choice, but what did you do? Of all the people you could have chosen, you chose this one. Yang Kai's face sank as he sneered meaningfully. Hu Zheng coughed dryly and didn't continue, simply shaking his head and saying, no means no. You choose another one. As a man, I must keep my word. This is choosing an ally, not a wife. How can I change my mind? Hua Stars said sternly, waving his hand. Father, you don't need to say anything, I've already made up my mind. You're making me angry. Hua Jing staggered. His face and neck were flushed red as his yuan qi began to swell. Hey father, you're so angry, do you want to hit me? Hua Stars said with a reckless expression, as if he really wanted to infuriate his father to death, continuing to provoke him. The other patriarchs had seen enough of the show and also tried to persuade him. Gao Mo said, Old Hua, forget it, children have their own ideas, there's no need to stop them. Meng Shiping also said, that's right. It's just a game, it's not a big deal. Hua Zheng coldly snorted, not a big deal? That's my Hua family's strength, why don't I see you not taking your family's strength seriously? The other patriarchs all chuckled and no longer said anything. Hua Zheng. Yang Yinghao had also appeared at the south gate at some point and had witnessed the farce just now. At this moment, he shouted, the inheritance war is a grand event for my Yang family to choose the next patriarch. It is also a stage for the younger generation. Your son has made his choice, you don't need to interfere. Hearing Yang Yinghao's words, Hua Zheng couldn't help frowning. Hua Stars, on the other hand, smiled and cupped his fists. Patriarch Yang is wise, unlike my father. He's old and senile. If you dare act presumptuously again, father will kill you today. Hua Zheng was furious. Enough, you're already so old, yet you still dare to come out and make a fool of yourself. Hurry home and retire, the Hua family still has me. Hua Stars waved his hand impatiently. You've got guts. Hua Zheng grit his teeth. You're free to choose, father won't stop you, but if you want to take the star door from father's hands, you're dreaming. Saying so, he flicked his sleeves and stormed off. Hua Stars, on the other hand, didn't care and simply smiled towards Yang Kai. Young Lord Kai, it looks like we'll have to share joys and sorrows in the future. Yang Kai didn't deny this. Outside the south gate, the situation finally subsided. The 8 young lords rode their cloud-treading colts towards War City. Both Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian glanced at Yang Kai awkwardly before nodding slightly and following behind Yang Kong, gradually disappearing into the distance. Yang Kai saw all of this and grinned, saying to Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiao, let's go. The two responded in unison. Hua Stars urged his mount to catch up with Yang Kai, looking at him for a moment before turning back to Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiao, laughing loudly, interesting. A powerless helper and 2 seriously injured blood warriors, no matter how you look at it, the situation isn't optimistic at all. If you keep spouting nonsense then scram. Yang Kai glared at him coldly. Hua Stars was startled, seemingly not having expected Yang Kai's attitude towards him to be so bad. Surprisingly, he didn't show any signs of anger and instead said with great interest, your other brothers treat their allies with kindness, yet you actually dare to treat me like this? Interesting. This young master would like to see how you plan to survive tonight. Do you really want me to lose? Yang Kai suddenly looked at him with a smile. Hua Stars choosing him as an ally was greatly beyond Yang Kai's expectations. Before he figured out his true intentions, Yang Kai didn't intend to count him as a helper. Yang Kai thought of him as an idler. Why do you think this young master chose you? Hua Stars grinned meaningfully. This young master just wants to see how a toothless tiger like you will be defeated in this inheritance war. Then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Yang Kai's lips curled upwards, his eyes filled with self-confidence. Hua Stars sneered, I don't deny that your personal strength is very strong, but what can you do without helpers? Pointing to Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiao, he said, what can those 2 accomplish? Don't tell me you haven't woken up yet like my father. Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiao both wore stupefied expressions as they nodded. Even if we die, we won't let anyone near little Lord. Chapter 416. Listening to Chu Gao Yi and Ying Jiao call themselves subordinates and act so respectfully, Hua Stars couldn't help frowning, subconsciously feeling that something wasn't quite right. The masters of the Yang family blood warrior Hull didn't seem to be so kind, right? How about we make a bet? Yang Kai suddenly proposed, looking at Stars Hua with a smile. Bet on what? Hua Stars suddenly became interested. Let's bet on whether I can survive tonight. Turning to look at Yang Kai, the central capital wolf young lord, Hua's expression became playful, his pair of eyes narrowing slightly as his thoughts raced. Scared. Yang Kai snickered, his expression quite cold as he snorted, if you're scared then don't follow me, be careful you don't lose your life tonight. I heard you're the Hua family's only heir, if you really die in War City, things won't end well. Scared? Hua Stars sneered meaningfully, this young master has lived for so long yet doesn't know how to write the word, scared. Since you dare bet with me, I'll make sure you lose convincingly. Don't you know this young master is best at eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling? As he spoke, his face filled with excitement. What's the bet? Hua Stars asked. Yang Kai swept his eyes over him and said, you're so poor right now, I'm afraid you don't have anything to offer, right? Hua Stars scratched his head awkwardly, that's true. Then let's play small. Yang Kai chuckled, if you lose, I don't want anything from you, just run 10 laps around War City naked. That's not very appropriate, Brother Kai. Hua Stars suddenly frowned. Running 10 laps around War City naked, wouldn't that be too embarrassing? In any case, your reputation is already in tatters, running 10 laps isn't a big deal. Don't worry about debts, don't worry about lice. Yang Kai raised his brow at him, a wretched expression appearing on his face. Hearing him say that, Hua Stars couldn't help feeling this was reasonable and nodded, that's right. But I don't think I'll lose, what if you lose? What can you give me? Yang Kai whistled. Suddenly, a loud eagle cry came from the sky. Immediately, a golden light swooped down, and the handsome golden feather eagle landed firmly on Yang Kai's shoulder, its sharp eyes sparkling. If you lose, I'll give it to you. Hua Stars was unable to contain his joy. If Yang Kai said that he would lose to him some treasures, Hua Xingxing would be very happy. He might not be interested yet. As the sole heir of the Hua clan, how could he lack treasures? However, the golden feather eagle was different. This was the Yang family's unique monster beast. Not to mention its strength, just its appearance alone was enough to tempt Stars. When he went out in the future, if he could keep the golden feather eagle by his side like Yang Kai, it would be a matter of pride for him. Spoiled, arrogant, and extravagant young masters loved these kinds of things. Deal. Hua Stars were afraid that Yang Kai would go back on his word. Quickly settling the matter, Hua Xingxing stared at the golden feather eagle happily, muttering, Eagle, eagle. After tonight, you'll change your surname to Hua. Yang Kai just smiled and didn't say anything. 100 kilometers away from the central capital, War City. This was a city built by the Yang family. Although it wasn't as prosperous and vast as the central capital, it was still quite good. Normally, it was only used as an ordinary city, but every time the Inheritance War came, it would become a battlefield. War City had 8 corners, each with a mansion prepared for the 8 young lords who would participate in the Inheritance War. Perhaps for a long time in the future, they would be engaged in a tug-of-war here. Throughout the years, the Yang family's inheritance war rarely ended in a short period of time. Most of them were long-lasting battles, often lasting 3 to 5 years before the result was decided. According to the ancient records of the Yang family, 100 years ago, a Yang family patriarch had won the final victory in less than half a year. This kind of result was enough to be proud of, because the closer to the end, the more powerful the enemy would be, and the more difficult it would be to win. Only when one had a considerable advantage could they easily defeat their enemy. The brothers entered the city one by one, causing the entire War City to boil with excitement. There were originally many people living here, but most of them had already left, afraid they would be implicated in the Yang family's inheritance war. Those who remained were all bold people. They were also looking forward to the inheritance war. After exchanging some pleasantries, the brothers tacitly separated and went to their respective mansions. Yang Kai's mansion was in the northwest corner. The location wasn't very good, it was relatively remote and deserted, but he didn't care. There were only 4 people in the group, so when they arrived at the northwest corner of the mansion, there were 2 pretty maids standing at the door. Inside the mansion, there were also some servants who could be ordered around. These were the servants sent by the Yang family to serve the daily lives of the young lords. This was a treatment that every mansion had. These people were just ordinary people, so there was no need to worry about them affecting the outcome of the inheritance war. When Yang Kai arrived, the two young girls politely bowed and said, "Greetings, young Lord Kai." Their tone wasn't very enthusiastic, it was just a routine greeting, but whether it was Yang Kai or Stars Hua, both of them subtly noticed that the expressions of these two maids were faintly lost. Obviously, because they had been assigned to a young lord with no future prospects, the two young girls felt that there was nothing to look forward to. Although the servants in these mansions wouldn't participate in the inheritance war, they certainly hoped to follow a more outstanding young lord. This way, not only would their safety be guaranteed, but if the young lord they served was satisfied with them, when he inherited the position of patriarch in the future, his own status would also rise. Hua Stars glanced over at Yang Kai with a smile, seemingly thinking that even these ordinary servants thought he had no future. Quite interesting. Yang Kai's expression remained indifferent, just nodding slightly, leading Chu Gao Yi and Ing Jiao into the mansion. Behind them, Hua Stars grinned obscenely as he turned to the two young girls and asked, "What are the names of these two girls?" Seeing the expression on Hua Stars' face, the two young girls couldn't help being frightened and quickly retreated. The central capital wolf's name was something they naturally knew, but just as they were secretly anxious that they would not be able to escape this time, Yang Kai's voice came from inside, "None of the people in my mansion are allowed to touch them." Hua Stars was startled and shouted, "Hey, Yang Kai, aren't you meddling a bit too much?" Saying so, he hurriedly chased after him and angrily said, "But there don't seem to be any other beautiful women here. What do you want me to do for fun?" Yang Kai glanced over at him faintly and said, "There should be some brothels in War City. As long as you're not afraid of being caught, you can naturally enjoy yourself." "Forget it." Hua Stars waved his hand. He had chosen Yang Kai as an ally in front of so many people, which was tantamount to making him an enemy. If he ran to the brothels now, he would definitely be in trouble. "Who wants to find a beautiful woman? Let's see if I can do it." Suddenly, a woman's voice called out from the hall of the mansion. Hearing this voice, Yang Kai couldn't help gawking while Hua Stars almost reflexively shrank his head. Both of them stared blankly. What they saw was a beautiful woman with bright eyes, white teeth, white skin, white bones, wearing a lavender dress, a smile on her face as she walked out from the brothels. She smiled at the two of them. "Chiu Yimeng?" Hua Stars exclaimed. "I was wondering who was looking for a beautiful woman, so it turned out to be you." Chiu Yimeng smiled at Hua Stars. The latter's expression became bitter. Secretly cursing his bad luck, he had unexpectedly run into her here. Suddenly he was startled. Looking at Chiu Yimeng, his face filled with shock, as if he had thought of something. "Why you here?" Yang Kai frowned. Today's events were really strange. Hua Stars had suddenly become his ally for no apparent reason, and now even Chiu Yimeng had come here. "Isn't your Chiu family on my sixth brother's side?" Yang Kai frowned and asked. The Chiu family's Chiu Ziruo was Yang Shen's ally. At that time, the Chiu family's patriarch, Chiu Shoucheng, was also present and had clearly informed everyone that his Chiu family was Yang Shen's ally. Yang Kai didn't understand why Chiu Yimeng would suddenly appear in his house, and it seemed she had been waiting here for a long time. "The Chiu family is the Chiu family, I am me." Chiu Yimeng smiled lightly, raising her chin and saying, "What, am I not welcome?" "Beautiful woman, you weren't expelled from the family by your father, were you?" Hua Stars guessed. "What do you mean? Speak clearly." Yang Kai didn't understand for a while. "I'm here to help you, isn't this the inheritance war? What's there to be confused about? From now on we're allies." Chiu Yimeng smiled sweetly, seeing Yang Kai's puzzled expression, suddenly feeling quite happy. Hua Stars' eyes narrowed slightly as he sneered, "Your father is really a wily old fox, actually betting on two treasures?" He obviously misunderstood, thinking that the Chiu family had not only befriended Yang Shen but also Yang Kai. However, Hua Stars was also full of doubts. He didn't understand what was so special about Yang Kai that the Chiu family would bet half of their chances on him. He had only come here to play with Yang Kai because he was looking for excitement, but the Chiu family was definitely not like this. I said, the Chiu family is the Chiu family, IME. Chiu Yimeng slowly shook her head. This time I'm not representing the Chiu family, I'm only representing myself. Yang Kai's thoughts turned sharply and he quickly understood many things, nodding. I understand. How many people do you have? Chiu Yimeng smiled bitterly. The people from the Autumn Rain Hall were brought here by me. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai instantly understood the strength of all the cultivator in the house, nodding lightly. Huastars, on the other hand, sneered, Autumn Rain Hall? That hall that specializes in taking in defective cultivators? It seems there are only 20 of them, right? It's the hall that specializes in taking in defective cultivators. Chiu Yimeng glared at Huastars. The Chiu family's cultivator, as long as they were seriously injured, their strength declining, and there was no hope for them to improve, they would be sent to the Autumn Rain Hall to do some light work. In the entire hall, there were only 1 or 2 immortal ascension boundary cultivators, and their cultivations weren't high. Chiu Yimeng bringing these people here was simply not enough to cope with the upcoming crisis. If they're here, they're here. Yang Kai looked at Chiu Yimeng and nodded with a smile. Chiu Yimeng smiled back. I hope you won't let me down. What are you so optimistic about? Huastars shook his head slightly, wondering why these two didn't care about this inheritance war more than he did, patting his chest and saying, a powerless helper, 2 blood warriors, and now a young lady who only brought a group of waste cultivators. This is really a gathering of wastrels. Yang Kai, you're really finished. Chapter 417. Huastars clearly wasn't optimistic about Yang Kai's chances. Listening to him say this, Chiu Yimeng frowned but didn't refute. This time, she had decided to assist Yang Kai in the inheritance war, which was also a great risk. Although she couldn't see what cards Yang Kai had up his sleeve, she still had a faint hunch that she absolutely couldn't underestimate him. It was just a feeling. As for whether Yang Kai could win the inheritance war or even survive the dangers tonight, Chiu Yimeng had no confidence in him at all. Forget it, I'm too lazy to argue with you. Huastars showed an impatient look, shaking his head and waving his hand. I'm going to bed, I need to rest and prepare to enjoy the show tonight, heh. Do as you wish. Yang Kai didn't bother with him. The mansion was very large, after all, it was likely to become a gathering place for many forces, so there were countless empty rooms. Huastars casually found a room and disappeared. What are you going to do? After Huastars left, Chiu Yimeng looked at Yang Kai helplessly and asked softly. The attitude of the Hua family's only young lord made Chiu Yimeng understand something. This central capital wolf was probably here to sightsee and had never thought of doing anything for Yang Kai. In other words, although on the surface Yang Kai had 2 great families' young lords as allies, in fact, he couldn't even bring out a decent force. There were only 2 blood warriors, both of whom were still seriously injured and weak, unable to display even 30% of their usual strength. You can mobilize the people of my Autumn Rain Hall at will, but don't expect them to play much of a role. Chiu Yimeng frowned. Smiling bitterly, Chiu Yimeng said, although today is the first day of the inheritance war, if you count on these 2 blood warriors, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. The strength your brothers have gathered now is more than enough to delay or even defeat them. Capturing you won't be a problem. I know. Yang Kai nodded, his expression indifferent. What about the Dong family? Chiu Yimeng hesitated for a moment, a faint anxiety in her voice. Isn't the Dong family your mother's family? Why haven't they shown up this time? Don't they care about you? At this time, if there was a first-class family supporting them, the situation wouldn't be so bleak. They'll come. Yang Kai's smile. But not today. What do you mean? Chiu Yimeng's words, from Yang's smile, she could smell a hint of a conspiracy. But even with her intelligence, she didn't know what Kai Yang was planning to do. You do as you please, there's no need to worry about today's matters for the time being. Different situations call for different actions. Yang Kai said casually before leading Chu Gao Yi and Ing Jiao inside. Qiu Yimeng tried to catch up, but seeing Yang Kai stride forward without even looking back, she couldn't help feeling a little annoyed and angrily stomped her foot. She ground her teeth in anger. She was now even more certain that Yang Kai had some sort of hidden card up his sleeve, but he didn't give her a clear explanation, causing Qiu Yimeng to feel somewhat discouraged. Every time she faced Yang Kai, she was always led by the nose, unable to gain the upper hand. She couldn't grasp what this man was thinking or what he would do next. Slippery as a loach. Qiu Yimeng cursed in her heart. After standing in place for a while, Qiu Yimeng snorted and turned to arrange the Autumn Rain Hall's defenses. Although there weren't any masters in the Autumn Rain Hall, it was still possible to arrange some traps around the mansion. War City. Hong Yuan Restaurant. The restaurant was bustling with activity, with a constant stream of customers. The waiters and waiters were all busy. Before the Inheritance War began, a lot of people had gathered in War City. This was the Yang family's battlefield, so naturally, many people had been waiting here for the arrival of the Yang family young lords. At a table near the window, a slightly chubby young man in his late 20s was leisurely drinking wine and tasting delicious food. Next to him, to his left and right, sat two old men who seemed to be in a daze. These two old men were motionless, their eyes closed as if they were asleep, but their eyes were hidden under their eyelids, constantly observing the guests coming and going in the restaurant. Inside the restaurant, the guests who had just finished drinking were all talking about what had happened outside the South Gate today. Two old men and one young man, the three old men all listened to these words. After a long time, one of the old men said, "Young Lord, it seems that young Lord Kai's future is bleak." With only Hua Xing as his helper and unable to mobilize any of the Hua family's forces, Yang Kai was tantamount to having no support. Indeed, the other old man gently nodded. "Shouldn't we go to his house to help now?" "I'd like to go." The chubby young man curled his lips disdainfully, "But that little brat sent me a message 2 days ago, telling me not to intervene today and to just wait and see." "Not intervene?" The old man who spoke before was puzzled. "But young Lord Kai doesn't have the strength to defend himself. How can he cope with the upcoming crisis? My Dong family has a marriage alliance with the fourth master, and young Lord Kai is young Lord Kai's cousin. Now that he is in trouble, we should help." This young man was the Dong family's Dong Qinghan, and the two old men were the Wind and Cloud dual guards who had always followed him. Dong Qinghan shook his head. "Only the heavens know what that smelly brat is up to. I also heard that his two blood warriors were seriously injured and unable to display their full strength. Originally, I wanted to rush over to help, but since he said so, I can only wait." The Wind Guard gently nodded. The Yang family's blood warriors are all powerful masters. The two blood warriors beside young Lord Kai, these two old men have also dealt with them and are well aware of their strength. Dong Qinghan suddenly became interested and asked with a smile, "If you had a life or death battle with them, what would the result be?" The Wind and Cloud dual guards wore a solemn expression. "Our cultivations are lower than theirs by a single minor realm. If they were at their peak, as long as one of them used his mad tyrant blood skill, they would be able to easily kill us. But now, the two of us are confident we can easily defeat them." Dong Qinghan sucked in a cold breath, his face filled with amazement as he nodded. The Yang family really has its own methods. This mad tyrant blood skill is so powerful, who would be able to resist it? The Wind Guard solemnly said, "Although the mad tyrant blood skill is powerful, it consumes a person's vitality and burns away their combat effectiveness, so the Yang family's blood warriors generally don't live long. This is also the tragedy of the Yang family's blood warrior hall masters." The Cloud Guard also nodded, a look of deep agreement. "Forget it, let's not talk about this for now. Since that little brat told me not to intervene, he must have some kind of arrangement. Let's just wait for a day, then tomorrow we'll go to his house and ask him." Dong Qinghan said casually, as if he wasn't worried about whether Yang Kai could survive the night. The Wind and Cloud dual guards couldn't help marveling in their hearts, wondering what young Lord Kai had said to their young master that actually made him so confident. In another restaurant on the 3rd floor. At the same time, there was also a young man around the age of 2 or 13 or 14 who was also quite handsome. At this moment, Just like Dong Qinghan, this young man was sipping wine and eating food, but unlike Dong Qinghan's helpless expression, this young man's face was full of smiles, as if he was enjoying a joyous occasion. Young master, old master ordered us to deliver something to that Yang Kai in order to keep the peace. Now that he's arrived in War City, do you think we should pay him a visit now? One of the guards who had been following Yang Kai quietly suggested. The young man smiled and said, "Why should we pay him a visit? Didn't you hear the people in the restaurant say that Yang Kai is probably going to be eliminated tonight? Although the things I, Lu Song, brought this time are not priceless, they are also not ordinary. If we deliver them to him now, he won't even be able to warm them up. Wouldn't that be like throwing meat buns at a dog, having no effect at all?" Then young master's meaning is. Although the guard felt this was somewhat inappropriate, he could only ask. The young master in front of him was the next patriarch of the Lu family, Lu Liang's son. This time, under Lu Liang's orders, he had brought a lot of gifts to the central capital in order to settle the matter of Yang Kai being attacked after leaving the Lu family. Although that incident had nothing to do with the Lu family, and later there were rumors that many of the Yang family young lords had been assassinated on their way back, Lu Liang had no choice but to pinch his nose and admit defeat. Who told Yang Kai to stay in his Lu family for a few days? An unexpected calamity was an unexpected calamity. As a great family, which great family didn't have its share of problems? After Qiu Yimeng sent this news, Lu Liang ordered his son to set off overnight to the central capital to apologize. The young man, Lu Song, coldly snorted, "This Yang Kai has gone too far. Just because he passed by my Lu family and was attacked, he took the opportunity to blackmail us and conspire with my Lu family's wealth. Tell me, how could my Lu family's things benefit such a despicable person?" What young master says is true. The guard also followed up and angrily said, "This Yang family young lord really isn't honest. What's even more despicable is that he actually asked the Qiu family's first young lady to send a letter to my Lu family, making it clear that he wants to extort money from my Lu family. That's why I won't give these things to him. He's just a grasshopper after autumn, he won't be able to jump around for more than a few hours. Heh, let's just wait and see the good show tonight." Lu Song smiled smugly. "Once he loses, there's no need for me to apologize to him." The guard frowned and whispered, "But young master, before we left, the old master said that no matter how this young Lord Kai performs in the inheritance war, these gifts must be delivered to him." Lu Liang knew that his son was a bit short-sighted, so he had repeatedly ordered the masters accompanying him to be responsible for supervising. Hearing this, Lu Song also frowned, unable to understand no matter how he thought about it. He naturally didn't know that at the same time the news of Yang Kai's attack reached the Lu family's first young lord, Lu Si, had also returned from Hidden Cloud Peak. Chapter 418. A few months ago, Lu Si went to Hidden Cloud Peak and gave the letter and jade pendant Yang Kai had given him to Xiao Fu Sheng. Grandmaster Xiao immediately refined a mysterious grade pill for him. After taking this mysterious grade pill and refining its medicinal efficacies, Lu Si was completely rid of his past sufferings and truly became an above immortal ascension boundary master. After returning to the Lu family, Lu Si immediately called Lu Liang over and gave him some confidential instructions. No one knew what Elder Si told the patriarch, but the elders of the family could feel that after returning from Lu Si, Lu Liang's opinion of Yang Kai had somewhat changed. It was because of this that he had ordered Lu Song to bring a lot of good things to the central capital to apologize to Yang Kai. Lu Song wasn't clear about the twists and turns of the story, so he still didn't quite understand his father's words. If this Yang Kai is defeated in the inheritance war, why would I give him so many things? Lu Song said as he shook his head, unable to understand what was going on, muttering under his breath, "This isn't good, this isn't good." The master next to him heard this and said, "Young master, why don't we first see how this Yang Kai performs?" In any case, old master only said to deliver these things to him, he didn't say when they would be delivered. If he can't make it through tonight, then it's up to young master to decide what to do with these resources. If he performs well, then we'll have to listen to master's orders. Yes, that's right. Lu Song nodded. If he loses on the first day of the inheritance war, he will definitely have no status in the Yang family in the future. My Lu family doesn't need to make friends with such a person. What young master says is correct. The master also nodded. Northwest corner of War City. Yang Kai's house. Inside a small room, Yang Kai sat lazily as a maidservant served him tea. Yang Kai took a sip. Waving his hand, he dismissed her. Before the maidservant left, she glanced over at Chu Gao-yi and Ying Jiao in horror. The condition of the two blood warriors was getting worse and worse these days, especially after Yang Kai had sent them out to subdue the small forces in the North City district. Their bodies had become increasingly weak and their injuries hadn't improved in the slightest. Even after taking the Yang family's special healing pills, the effect was still minimal. His foundation had been damaged. Whether it was Yang Kai or himself, they were all very clear about this. If it wasn't for the fact that his foundation was damaged, with their strength and vitality, their injuries would more or less heal. At this moment, the two blood warriors' faces were pale and their bodies were sweating profusely. It was as if there was an intense pain assaulting their bodies. Their expressions were sometimes gentle and sometimes ferocious. Green veins protruded from their foreheads like earthworms. It was a terrifying sight. Ordinary people saw it. Naturally, they would be terrified. Even so, the two of them were like javelins, standing there straight and motionless. Yang Kai looked up at them. His eyes were filled with admiration. He himself was a person with extremely strong mental fortitude, and his temperament was also quite firm. But if he were to put himself in the shoes of these two blood warriors, he wouldn't be able to endure such treatment. Yang Kai was certain he wouldn't be able to do any better than them. At the very least, the young lord who followed them didn't seem to regard them as human beings, only wanting to squeeze the last bit of value out of them before their vitality ran out. This was something Yang Kai couldn't accept. However, the loyalty of the two blood warriors to the Yang family didn't allow them to complain. Not only did they not complain, they didn't even show any dissatisfaction. Instead, they were completely loyal to Yang Kai, doing whatever he told them to without uttering a single word of nonsense. Feeling Yang Kai's gaze, Chu Gao-yi and Ying Jiao's expressions became more and more meticulous. After a long time, Yang Kai chuckled and asked, "Which one of you is Chu Gao-yi?" To be honest, Yang Kai really didn't know who these two were because from the day he returned from the Blood Warrior Hall until now, they hadn't said a word to each other. When the two blood warriors heard this, their expressions didn't change in the slightest. The taller one who looked stronger quickly cupped his fists. "Subordinate is Chu Gao-yi. Then you're Ying Jiao?" Yang Kai looked at the other man. Ying Jiao nodded gently. Compared to the two blood warriors, Ying Jiao was the more special one because although he was a man, his appearance was quite delicate. His figure was tall and thin, and he had a small mustache at the corners of his mouth, giving him a particularly astute appearance. Relatively speaking, he was more taciturn. This person's personality should be similar to Yang Wei's, a lonely person. From the few words of Fourth Master Yang and Dong Suju, Yang Kai also learned that these two blood warriors were good at dominating territory. Chu Gao-yi's specialty was rapid eruption of power. He could release all of his yuan qi and spiritual energy in just a stick of incense worth of time. Once he launched an attack, it would be continuous, not giving his enemy the slightest chance to breathe. During this incense worth of time, he was basically invincible among cultivators in the same realm. This person was the one who dared to risk his life the most in the entire Blood Warrior Hall. Although he was an Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage cultivator, after so many years, he had defeated many peak Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. Even in the entire Blood Warrior Hall, his strength was still relatively high. However, Ying Jiao was different. Ying Jiao's specialty was speed, coming and going without a trace. His concealment skills were also quite good, so when he attacked, his enemy wouldn't even have time to react. It was rumored that in the Yang family Blood Warrior Hall, the most difficult person to deal with wasn't Hall Master Feng Xing or Vice Hall Master Zhou Feng, but rather Ying Jiao, who was like a shadow. Those who were targeted by Ying Jiao, even if they fled to the ends of the world, couldn't escape his pursuit. When these two worked together, They complemented each other and were a pair of terrifying blood warriors. Last time, when these two escorted the Yang family's fourth young lord Xianxia and Wu back to his family, they were besieged by many immortal ascension boundary masters. The strength of that group of enemies was even stronger than the one Yang Kai had encountered. Chu Gaoyi and Ing Jiu desperately tried to defend themselves, but Xianxia and Wu's own strength wasn't enough, so they couldn't escape. When Yang Kai suddenly spoke to them, Chu Gaoyi and Ing Jiu were both confused, not knowing what instructions he had to give them, so they quickly turned to him. "Do you have any complaints about me?" To the two's surprise, Yang Kai actually asked such a question. As he spoke, Yang Kai's lips curled into a smile as he stared at them meaningfully. Chu Gaoyi quickly said, "Subordinate wouldn't dare." "Not even a little bit?" Yang Kai snorted, "I want to hear the truth." Chu Gaoyi's expression couldn't help becoming a little awkward, glancing at Ing Jiu, not knowing what to say. When they were in the Blood Warrior Hall, the two of them had heard Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian say how kind this little lord was and how good he was to the Blood Warriors. Later, when they had lost all hope, Yang Kai had taken them in as his retainers. With the words of Tu Feng and Tang Yuxian in addition to Yang Kai's righteous actions, Chu Gaoyi and Ing Jiu were naturally grateful and secretly decided to assist Yang Kai in making a name for himself, even if they had to lose their lives. But these days, he didn't even spare them a glance, his attitude was extremely cold, and he didn't even give them time to heal. Although they were blood warriors who were loyal to the Yang family, in the end, they were still people. As the saying went, a gentleman would die for his bosom friend. Yang Kai being so inconsiderate of his subordinates, they naturally felt uncomfortable in their hearts. "Speak." Yang Kai picked up his teacup and took a sip, looking at them solemnly. Chu Gaoyi pursed his dry lips and said, "Ing Jiu and I were already at the end of our rope, but little Lord helped us when we were in danger. Sending charcoal in snowy weather is something we two subordinates will never forget, so in any case, we would never dare to complain to little Lord, but we are a little disappointed." His words were sincere and his expression was solemn. Obviously he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Yang Kai's brow slowly rose. "Do you think I'm different from what Tu Feng and the others said?" Chu Gaoyi nodded gently, this time even Ing Jiu nodded. "Of course it's different because I never wanted to choose you." Yang Kai stood up. "I wanted Tu Feng and Yuxian, after all, everyone is already familiar with each other." The two blood warriors' expression darkened. "But the first time is unfamiliar, the second time is familiar, I think we're now familiar with one another." Yang Kai looked at the two of them with a smile. "At the very least, I know what you really think." Both Chu Gaoyi and Ing Jiu's eyes lit up as they stared at him silently. Yang Kai saying this was tantamount to telling them he wanted to communicate with them. This was something both of them had been looking forward to. "Your loyalty to the Yang family I don't doubt, nor do I doubt your gratitude to me." Yang Kai raised his brow and smiled. "But if one day I were to have a conflict with the Yang family, what choice would you make? Would you stand with me, or with the Yang family?" When the two heard this, their expressions changed greatly as they stared at Yang Kai in horror. "Little Lord is joking, right?" Chu Gaoyi frowned and asked. "I'm serious." Yang Kai stared at him without blinking. Chu Gaoyi took a deep breath. "Although I don't want such a thing to happen, if such a day comes, Ing Jiu and I will still follow little Lord." Ing Jiu finally spoke up, his expression cold. "If it weren't for little Lord, the two of us would have already wasted our cultivations and retired into the mountains. So, our cultivation is little Lord's. If little Lord needs it, feel free to use it." Listening to the two of them say this, Yang Kai finally grinned. The reason why they said this was because Yang Kai was also a member of the Yang family, so they didn't think such a situation would really happen, and also because they knew that their days were numbered. Even if such a day did come, they wouldn't be able to wait. But in any case, Yang Kai finally got the answer he wanted. "I once told Yuxian that those who know my secret will either become one of my people or become a dead man." Yang Kai's smile suddenly became strange. "Now you're qualified to know some of my secrets." Chu Gaoyi and Ing Jiu both looked at Yang Kai with some surprise, not understanding what he was talking about. "These 2 pills, one for each of you, take them and eat them." Yang Kai stretched out his hand and tossed out 2 pills. Chu Gao Yi and Ing Jiu reached out and caught them, both of them thanking Yang Kai verbally, but their hearts were filled with doubts. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, martial world, and tales of demons and gods.